Everyday people working 9 to 5, saving up that money, trying to survive, investing in the future, trying to be wise, to be money heroes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nick Johnson, host of Everyday Money Heroes, and I've reached early retirement. I'm here to provide information on how to obtain financial independence and inspire you through sharing stories of everyday people who are turning knowledge into freedom.
That hustle, always reaching for the sky. We're gonna be money heroes, never gonna shy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Money Heroes. We provide information and inspiration to people of all ages to take control of their financial journey. I am your host, Nick Johnson, and today we have a very special guest here, Andy Hill. Before we get started talking to Andy, a little bit about Andy. Andy Hill, AFC, is an award-winning family finance coach behind Marriage, Kids, and Money, a platform dedicated to helping families build wealth and happiness. Andy's advice and personal finance experience has been featured in major media outlets like CNBC, Forbes, MarketWatch, Kiplinger's Personal Finance, and NBC News. With over 10 million podcast downloads and video views, Andy's message of family financial empowerment has resonated with listeners, readers, and viewers across the world. His debut book, Own Your Time, 10 Financial Steps to Put Your Family First and Escape the Corporate Grind, will be released in January 2026. When he's not talking money, Andy enjoys being a soccer dad, singing karaoke with his wife, and relaxing on his hammock. So with that being said, Andy Hill, thank you so much for being here on Everyday Money Heroes.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for that warm introduction. I
Uh,
appreciate it.
no problem. So one thing that you did mention that you enjoy karaoke with your
Oh, you
wife.
know
So
it.
I'm assuming that this is a duo type thing. So at the end, I want you to think about what is your go-to jam when it's karaoke time.
Ooh,
So not yet. We're going to save that to the end.
sounds
So
good.
just
Save
kind
save
of
it for
go
the
ahead.
good stuff.
Yes, yes, absolutely. All right. So first of all, let's talk about your journey. And Andy, just being completely transparent, I have been a money nerd for many, many moons. And so once
There
you're a
you
money
go.
nerd, you go in there and you start to consume content.
Mm.
And as I was kind of going down the rabbit hole, I discovered you. And I was like,
Mm.
man, what you said and your approach to finance really resonated with me. And then one day I was thinking, I don't think he always did this. I mean, he wasn't always, an accredited financial counselor. I mean, so what is the kind of origin story of Andy Hill and what made you go down this path in your life?
Oh man, you are right. I didn't always make videos on the internet and try to make people laugh on TikTok and Instagram and all that good stuff. No, early on, I used to work in corporate event marketing, and I had
Oh,
been at that for ever since I graduated from college. Just sort of fell into it after a couple internships in that area. I live in the Metro Detroit area, so automotive is like a big industry around here. So
mhm.
there was a lot of opportunities for young people who were willing to travel around the country and show off cars to do that. And when I was in my 20s, that was really appealing to me. I'm
That's good
like, heck
stuff.
yeah, I'll get to travel around to these major cities and show off luxury cars. It was really cool. I would
Right.
be in my jeans and t-shirt setting up the car and the display and everything like that, and then they'd say, okay, now get into a suit, and now you're the product specialist that tells all about the car. And I get to do this in major cities all around the US, which was really cool.
Mhm.
But after a few years of doing that, and after finding my awesome wife,
Mhm.
and we started to talk about having kids, the idea of kind of traveling and working on the weekends and in the evenings kind of sort of lost its appeal. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, I was making good money and I was sort of locked into this work lifestyle because I'm starting to now provide for a family. So I felt a little bit stuck. I felt a little
Mhm.
bit like I had built something up and worked my way up a career, but it now wasn't serving the purpose for me that I wanted anymore. I wanted to be a husband that was around, that helped out, that was
Mhm.
a fun guy when I was there, not exhausted from being on the road, and also a dad that wanted to be involved in his kids' lives and not just be traveling and gone all the time. So my mindset of what was important to me changed. And around that time, I said, well, if we've got our daughter coming into our lives soon and I want to be a present father in the future, then I need to start using this financial resource that I have that I'm bringing in to help me create some freedom for myself in the future. And that all just started with a little bit of education in the beginning. I didn't really know a lot about money. My wife and I got together in what is it now, 15 years ago, and we were
Wow.
making like $130,000 together, and we were enjoying all of it. We were
Yeah.
spending it and enjoying life. We were a newlywed couple, and that was fun. But when I had that epiphany moment of like, hey, I want to be able to provide for my daughter and be around for her and be a part of her life, well, maybe we can utilize some of that money to try to create some financial freedom for ourselves. So that's sort of where my journey started. And I said,
Okay.
okay, what can I do with my money to own more of my time in the future?
Oh, okay. Thank you for that backstory, Andy.
Yeah.
So you kind of figured out, hey, you know what? I have these resources coming in, but it's not just about what I have coming in. It's all about my life. And,
Yes.
I have a wife, and we're thinking about expanding our family, and I want to be more present. So that kind of sparked the fire. Well, that I guess maybe a pun intended, but not really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It works for me.
Yeah, but literally at some point, you're like, okay, I want to go get the information. So, what was your next step, Andy, as far as, okay, I know that, I don't know what I don't know. How can I go and find some information to go ahead and put this plan into action?
Yeah, I got inspired by some financial gurus and creators around that time. I liked watching the Susie Orman show
Ah,
on,
you were
I think it
you were
was,
Susie's disciple. I was as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I liked Susie. I thought she was funny. I thought she was kind of off the cuff, and she had a show. I think it was on CNBC or
It
one of,
was. It
yeah,
was. Yeah.
and it was Susie Orman show or something like that.
Hmm.
And she had this segment called "How Am I Doing," which was really
I
fun to
remember
watch.
that.
And she'd
Yeah.
sort of like analyze people's finances and then beat them up a little bit and then give them a grade, at the end. And so
Hmm.
I was watching at the time and I was saying, hey, you know what? Nicole and I are making like $130,000. We're doing really well, making six-figure income. Surely our grade would be awesome. We'd have an A. But then she kept on using this term net worth over and over again. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And I wonder what our net worth is because we're making so much money. And so my wife and I went up to this big whiteboard in our guest room and said, let's kind of draw out our net worth. So on the left side, we started writing down our assets. Okay, all the stuff we own. We owned a house. That was kind of cool. We owned a car. We had some cash. We really weren't investing that much. But overall, the assets were looking pretty good. It was like 200,000 or something like that. And then we started writing down our liabilities next to that. And it was, oh man, we owe a lot more on this house than it's actually worth based on the time frame we were in Metro Detroit area. This was around 2010, so things weren't
Hmm.
looking that great for the housing market. I also owed a lot on student loans, and my wife owed some money on the car. And so the balance of that net worth was actually negative. It was a negative
Oh,
$50,000 net worth. And we said, okay, we're not rich. We probably wouldn't get a A grade from Susie.
right.
What can we do to flip this script and start to make some progress? So I would say Susie was very motivating, and a lot of it was just sort of that epiphany financial literacy knowledge that I started to gain about like what is net worth and why is that an important number. So when
Mm.
I analyzed that, I said, okay, well, the big part is the problem in the middle there. We owe a lot of money and we owe
Mm.
a lot of money to people. What can we do to at least start there to start paying off some of that debt as a good place to go? So that
Yeah.
was our starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Susie Orman. She was probably the first individual that I actually got into as well. I actually
Yeah.
had the book. There's a book that she had, and I can't remember the name of the book, but she's on there with like a leather jacket, and she's kind of also like
Yes.
a old like kind of glamour photo.
Yes, it did
uh,
look like glamour shots.
yes, it looked like a glamour shot. Yeah, but that was like my first like personal finance book. My wife gifted it to me because she knew how much I enjoy personal finance.
Yes, I
And
love it.
so we go out, we try to figure out information, and we try to do our best. But you
Mhm.
talk about net worth, Andy, and it's amazing that when I talk to individuals about their journey to financial independence, one of the biggest things I say is like, do you know your net worth? Because it's amazing that many of us are not even at zero.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, we have to dig ourselves out that hole. And so it's hard
Yes.
for us to really get that vision of, okay, where we can go and kind of having that freedom of and ownership of time when it's like we're not even at zero. So net worth is extremely important. Budgeting, tracking expenses is extremely important. But that initial kind of snapshot of where you are, I think it could definitely be eye-opening. And it especially seems like in your case, you realize, hey, you know what, we're making good money, but man, we're not even at zero. And
Yes.
it's really difficult. So I understand that. So one of the things, Andy, that we talk about here is inspiration and information. So we often, I'm sure you do much more than I do, come to people who just feel like the situation is hopeless. They feel like, hey, you know what? It's like, I take, one step forward, I take two steps back. So as far as advice for folks who feel like they just can't get their finances in order, what would you recommend them as far as a starting point?
Yeah, I think sometimes we hear stories about people who are way ahead of us and we get
Mm,
really excited about it. But then after a little bit of time, we get a little depressed because we're saying, well, I could never become a millionaire, or I could never pay off that much debt, or I could never XYZ, right?
mhm,
I think we get a little hard on ourselves just as humans,
mhm,
and there's a lot to be seen online or even in our lives about people who we think are doing better than us. I think if we could just allow ourselves to do small incremental improvements, a lot of people call it the aggregation of marginal gains,
mhm,
of just saying, what can I do to improve 1% this week? Or what can I do to improve 1% this month? Instead
mhm,
of saying, hey, I need to be saving a ton more money in order to get to my goals, what can I do? What small little things can I change in my budget or in my life that will allow me to move that direction? Just marginally.
mhm.
My wife and I are runners. We like to run. And
Okay.
so when we started our running journey, going a mile was very, very difficult. It was
Yeah.
tiring and painful. And we were training for a marathon. It's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be impossible. But if we train a little bit each week and we train a little bit more each month, a mile doesn't seem that bad. 2 miles doesn't seem that bad. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you want to go. So, if you just start making steps in the right direction, I think your financial situation is exactly like that. And Nicole and I did that too with our finances because we saw that negative $50,000. We're like, oh my gosh, we are way in the hole. How do we get out of this? For us, it started with collaborating together, working and building a budget that worked for both of us so we could actually see the numbers, how much is coming in and where is it going. With that
Mm,
information and that knowledge, you can start to make those 1% improvements over time. So I would say, you know, creating a goal for yourself, writing down your numbers through a budget or just checking out your net worth, and then say, what can I do this week to make progress in the direction I want to go in?
mm. Yeah, that is great, Andy. Like you mentioned, comparison is the thief of joy. Um,
Absolutely.
and the thing is that you never know anyone's story, and even oftentimes, you don't know, even if you see someone, in a large home or a nice car, you don't really know the entire story behind that particular situation. They could be cash poor just because, they have a car. It doesn't mean that they have that joy that you can have from being financially free. So it's
Absolutely.
extremely important that you do that. And also, you can talk about those small kind of incremental gains. And that's extremely important. There's a saying that, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And so
Absolutely.
basically, when we're trying to go and get to our financial finish line. And that financial finish line be whatever goals or aspirations that we have for ourselves and our family. We have to understand that, every journey starts at one step. Do a little something, go through, look at your credit card bill. Do you have any things that are still being pulled out of there that you haven't used in years? Like, oh, I didn't know I had that automatic, debit coming out of my account. Just little stuff like that. And, you start to, kind of get some wind to your back. And you're like, okay, I did this, I did that. And definitely want to celebrate those wins. At some point, you're going to get to where, what, all you have left is big rocks. I know in our journey, the last thing that we had was to pay our mortgage off. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, man, okay. I was like, well, it's going to take a couple years for this one, but understand that, we had already did so many things up to that, we were able to enjoy those things, but also understand that, what, there's a little time in between, and stay, focused on that finish line and we'll get there. So that's extremely important. So
Absolutely. And having motivating folks like you to listen to say, hey, here's what happens after you hit that mark. It can be very motivating to find the right folks that inspire you along your journey.
it is. Thank you for that, Andy. And one of the things that I've heard from so many people who are within the financial, personal finance space is that association is so important. who's your community? If you don't have a community of people who have that common belief that, this is achievable, go find those people. And I'm not saying, to go ahead and, stop talking to your friends since kindergarten because, they have bad money habits. But what I'm saying is that it's important to be around those people to encourage you and also for knowledge transfer. I can't tell you the number of times I've just kind of been around someone who is interested in personal finance and they'll say something. I'll be like, what? I didn't know that was a thing. And they're like, yeah, and they're saying, my knowledge has been enhanced just by, being around that person. So definitely, make sure that, you have that association with other people. And if you can't find that, go out, there's a lot of great tools out there, that you can find people with just that kind of common interest. So that's extremely important.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So you, Andy, are an individual, and I've heard you make mention to Coast Fire before, and I
Yeah.
believe that is the initial approach that you and your family took. Is that correct?
I love the concept of Coast Fire. Absolutely.
Okay. And so if you could to, for those of you out there who doesn't know, we have fire, but then there's a lot of, I would almost say kind of different areas within fire as far
Hmm.
as you can do barista fire, fat fire, chubby fires, a whole lot of other stuff. But Andy, you took Coast Fire. So as far as you and your wife and your family, how has embracing that concept changed your life? As far as,
Yes.
okay, this is who I am now. I never would have thought that, back when I was doing marketing and things like that, since I embrace these concepts, these are the fruits that I'm able to that have been, come to fruition in my life and how it has impacted you.
Yeah, I liked the idea of Coast Fire when I heard about it originally because it incorporated a couple things to me. The front loading of your investments
Mhm.
so that you can get to a point of, wow, I've invested so much that I can let these investments work on autopilot between time and compound interest. It's still going to get me to my retirement number. I think that
Mhm.
concept is fantastic. So that really resonated with me. Also, the idea around Coast Fire is that you're not stopping working completely. You're just finding work that you now maybe enjoy a little bit more than you did, and maybe
Mhm.
even working a little bit less than you were. So for me, in the situation that I was in with my corporate job, I said, well, I don't mind working. I enjoy helping people and I enjoy, working hard and achieving goals. I'm a very goal oriented person. It's just that the career that I have right now doesn't serve me in the way that it used to. So, what can I do to have a career that does serve me and maybe doesn't take up as much of my time? So, I'm like, okay, the idea of Coast Fire really resonated with me because I'm like, okay, if I can front load my investments and then take care of our finances in a way where we don't need as much money to live, I can probably build myself a part time work lifestyle
Mhm.
and my wife a part time work lifestyle where we could spend more time with each other, take care of our health more, spend more time with our kids, spend time with my aging parents. Time is really the resource that I was trying to buy more of. And with these investments that we did through our workplace 401k, Roth IRA, HSA, things like that, these tax advantaged retirement accounts. We built up our accounts so much that we got to around a $500,000 by age 40.
Mhm.
And with time and compound interest, this $500,000, with us just sort of backing down, completely stopping or slowing down our contributions, could still make it to around $2 million by the time we get to 60. Now,
Mhm.
we're about 3 or 4 years into that plan of backing down our contributions, and it's working just fine. We are now around 750,000 or $800,000
Nice.
in our investment account, and we really haven't contributed that much between
Oh.
that time frame. So it is working. Of course, the market will do its thing, downs, ups, things like that, but we have to remain calm and realize that the stock market is a roller coaster. It's ups and downs, but if you can stay on that roller coaster and not jump off, then you won't get hurt and you'll become wealthy at the end. So we like
Mhm.
the idea of Coast Fire. It has allowed us to move into a direction that works well for both my wife and I. We don't mind working. We just don't want to do it with the majority of our time. We would like to
Mhm.
work 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week, and go back to living life because there's a lot of other things that we want to be doing. We want to be present parents, we want to be good spouses to each other, and we want to be healthy. We want to live a long time and increase our lifespan as well as our health span.
Oh wow, that's great. you and your family is a testament to a lot of times people talk about compound interest, like, oh, people are like, oh, the eighth wonder of the world. But what you just shared right now is a living testament to it. You stopped around 500,000. Right now you're around $750,000, and you really haven't made many more contributions. You just allowed that compounding to happen. So that's amazing. And for those of you out there who are like, hey, is it really a thing? Can it happen? We just heard it firsthand. So this is what's
It's
happening
working.
here. Yeah, absolutely. With all this knowledge that you have, Andy, you are now an author. And you
That's
have a
right.
book that is coming up. It is Own Your Time, 10 Financial Steps to Put Your Family First and Escape the Corporate Grind. Definitely, what can the listeners expect when they go out in there and grab a copy of that book?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of it is sharing our story from that negative $50,000 net worth back 15 years ago and how we built our net worth to well over $1 million in our
Mhm,
late 30s and then found financial freedom through Coast Fire and built our part-time work life. So I built it out in 10 steps that
mhm,
our journey followed along that way. I've also had the blessing of interviewing dozens and dozens of families on a similar journey on my podcast. We're over 500 episodes now for the last decade, and I
mhm.
include their stories within that book as well and outline those steps so they're easy to follow. And again, as we talked about in the beginning, the aggregation of marginal gains, 1% improvements over time. And that's what those 10 steps are really set up to do. This is a 10-year journey, 15-year journey, but really you got to start somewhere. And if you want to own more of your time because you feel like your corporate life is sort of taking over and not allowing you to live the life you want to have, that's what this book is all about. So yeah, you can get it for pre-order right now on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and it comes out in January. But I'd love any sort of pre-order support because that will help us to have a great launch in January.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, our listeners, we have a call to action. Listeners and viewers definitely want to go out and support Andy in spreading his message of financial independence and his approach to it and how it's benefited his life. So definitely want to go out and grab a copy of that book in pre-order. And so we gave a little bit of a teaser at the top, Andy, about you being a karaoke singer. Now, I enjoy a good karaoke. And usually, whenever I do karaoke, I go for the shock factor. I try to
Ah,
go out there and say, okay, people like, hey, I want to go up there and sing a song that people like, yeah, why does this guy know about this song? So typically, my first song that my go-to is Bohemian Rhapsody by
oh, I
Queen.
love it.
By Queen. Now, the problem with that song is that being a karaoke person, that ain't a short song.
No.
It is not a short song. So if it's a crowded house, usually I try to be respectful of the other people in the queue, so I won't do that. But if it's a slow night, I will definitely do Bohemian Rhapsody. But
But
when
that's
it's
a
a
crowd participation one too, though. So people are singing
it,
along with you.
it is, so definitely, if the crowd is right, they can act in, they definitely can do that. But if it's a full house, I typically go back to my I like to do a little bit of now this isn't a shock factor, but I like Tricky by Run DMC. So that's kind of my
Oh,
thing. So
no, that's
that
perfect.
I do like Tricky by Run DMC. So that being said, that's kind of, so if you ever see me and you're in a karaoke place and it's not a long line or a lot, please know that okay, Nick's gonna do Bohemian Rhapsody.
Get
So
ready for a 6-minute ballad or
yes,
something,
get
right?
ready for it, and a little air guitar maybe, during
I
the
love it.
break. I don't know. But Andy, so I have to ask you, what is your go-to? Now it could be a duo because you do it with your wife, so I'm not sure. So
Yeah.
I'm eager to hear what that is.
My wife and I are still looking for that solid duo song, that
Ah,
duet
okay.
song. We've tried, time of our lives, that
Ah,
one.
very
That one
nice.
works out okay because it's
Mhm.
super cheesy
Okay.
and we like to goof around up there.
Okay.
I like Billy Joel. Billy Joel kind of leans more towards my vocals in that
Okay.
area. I like the Killers as a band. Mr. Brightside is always a fun
Oh,
one to
okay.
do. And yeah, those are, I kind of cycle through some of those songs like
Mhm.
early 2000s, but then also I'll pick up some 80s songs in there just for fun. But I,
Mhm.
I love the shock factor that you're talking about with bringing out a random song. You can always pick up ones that are good for crowd pleasers where they sing
Mhm.
along with you.
Yes.
But some of them get so recycled that people just get sick of hearing them. Like I
Yeah.
Sweet Caroline
So
is like a
I
really
was thinking
is
about
it,
Sweet Caroline just
it,
now.
it it's like either people are gonna love you or they're gonna hate you
Hate you.
that you're singing it again.
Yeah, literally, Eddie, I had Sweet Caroline in my head because
Yes,
we
yes.
were we
Ba
were
ba ba.
yeah, we were just on a cruise recently and we were going to the karaoke night. And one of the first songs I heard, Good times sometimes never. So there we go. That's definitely it. You kind of make a reference to, every karaoke person, you have to know your range. See, like
Yes.
for instance, early in my karaoke journey, I would sing songs that I liked, but it wasn't within my range. So I would go up
That's
there and
such a good point.
I'd be cracking notes. I would know the words. I'd be like, like this is the longest, 3.5 minutes of my life. So, you have to understand your range. There's certain vocals
Absolutely.
that go in there.
I like
So
I have a list on my phone and I need to add one like you're describing, like, hey, here are the crowd pleasers, and then here's the ones that fit in my vocal range. Like I think I need to update my list a little bit.
yeah,
Thank you for that. Thank you
it's
for that.
it's no problem. Well, definitely, maybe one day our paths will cross and we will
I
be
hope so.
adjacent to a karaoke bar, and I'll say, Andy,
Yes.
let's go do it. You know,
It's a
uh,
date, man. Absolutely.
yeah, we definitely could do that. Well, as our time wraps up here, Andy, I want to once again thank you so much for sharing your journey, what you're doing in our community. I've had the good fortune of meeting Andy a couple times, and sometimes when you meet individuals in person, you hope that they are who you think they're going to be, and Andy is definitely that. So thank you so much for being such a solid guy, Andy, and sharing your time that you have here with us. As we close out, I want to remind our listeners and our viewers to follow us on the podcast platform of your choice or subscribe on YouTube. With that being said, I'm going to sign off here. My name is Nick Johnson, and as always, I'm going to remind you to trust the process. Have a great day.